What's happening, everybody? I'm Steve, and welcome back to Junkdrummer TV. Today, I'm finally going to get to talk about Ringo Starr and the Beatles. Now, let's go ahead and address this real quick up front. Over the last 2.5 years that I've had, 2.5 years that I've had this channel, I've had about 1,000 comments of saying, hey, react or analyze Ringo Starr. And of course, I would love nothing more than to do that. But every YouTuber, every music YouTuber knows that whoever owns the Beatles catalog, they block everything. So I don't want to go through the whole rigmarole of doing a video and then it getting blocked. So today I'm actually going to get to talk about it. And I'm going to do a review of part 1 of Get Back, the documentary that follows the Beatles up until they do the famous rooftop concert. And it is the sessions and rehearsals and writing sessions that become a lot of songs that's on Let It Be. Now, before we get into today's video, I would like to implore anyone, if you think I have deserved it, please give me a like, a comment, and share. Please go check out my Patreon. Please go check out my merch table with the whole month of December. I will be doing 20% off promo code Christmas. Also, if you would, give me a double tap on the subscription and the notification bell. And let's talk about this very valuable documentary. Now, going into it, I'm going to be honest, I was trepidatious. I am not a big fan of documentaries that lift the veil too much. Specifically, I am trying to break your heart, and meeting people are easy. That's Wilco and Radiohead. I am not a fan of airing bands' drama to the world. I'm just not. Because I've been in a lot of bands that's had a lot of drama, and we didn't want our fans to fucking know about it, and I'm not a big fan of it. And I was clued in that there was going to be some contentious elements in this documentary by my good friend Molly. Shout out Molly. And that made me not... Actually, I didn't watch it for a little while. It has been out for a while, right? And I didn't for that exact reason. But it's the Beatles, and it's 9 hours, which is why I'm only doing part 1 right now, because how would you review 9 hours of material? It's the Beatles, and I thought maybe there's something in there that's valuable from like a teacher standpoint. So I went into it as a fan, obviously. If you watch my channel, you know that I have said on a few occasions, I am a Rolling Stone man. But that doesn't mean that I'm not a huge Beatles mark as well, because of course I am. So I just broke down, and yesterday I watched it, all 3 hours of part 1. And it's one of the most valuable documentations of any band that I've ever seen so far, part 1. If you enjoy what I'm doing with this review, please let me know about it in the comment section, and I'll do part 2 and part 3. I'm, of course, going to watch it, but you know, if y'all want to hear me do a review of it, I will. First things first, of course, they do a really good, it's Peter Jackson, who's the director, of course, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and other movies. He does a very good summary of where the Beatles started and how we got to where we are. This is from 68 or 69. Now, look, Beatles fanatics. I am a Beatles fan, but I am not up on all of the lore. You know, the Beatles are one of the most fetishized bands in the world. There are fucking people out there who know what microphone that John Lennon preferred to fart into, and I'm not one of those. I'm just a big fan of their music. So if I get some of this lore wrong, please forgive me. But it starts out with him summarizing and getting us to present day, which is the documentary, right? And there's spoilers, I guess. I don't know if you can spoil a fucking documentary. But the very first thing I noticed was the fucking drum set. It was so weird. It was a natural finish Ludwig, of course, but it wasn't the black oyster pearl that we always think of when we think about the Beatles drum set. And he had 2 toms up and 1 down. So that was very strange. Beatles fans, is that like a drum set that he played only in the studio? Kind of like John Bonham or something? I don't know. But that was the first thing that I noticed. Let's get this out of the way. Bands, if you're writing a record and you're and especially if you're the most important band in the world, can we leave the band girlfriends and boyfriends husbands, wives, enchanting monks, home. There are so many things that show up in this documentary that show you that this is a band that is about to implode. You can tell by just the way that they are interacting that this is, and again, this is all of what I got out of it. I could be completely wrong, but this is what I got out of it. Steve from Junkdrummer TV is what I got out of it. And you could tell that this was a band that was not in a decline creatively, because they never made a bad record. Every record is perfect and a classic. But you could tell that there was the puzzle pieces were separating, if you know what I'm saying. Why the fuck is Yoko Ono in every shot? Like that stereotype of Yoko Ono, band girlfriend, breaking up a band, it seems to be holding true so far, because no one talks to her. The first time that anyone even acknowledges Yoko is when Linda shows up later on, Linda McCartney. I can't remember Linda Beale at the time, I think. She's a photographer and really hot. It's just no way to go about running a band or a business. And that's something else you realize during this is the Beatles are very much a business. I mean, maybe more on that later. There's one big point that I'm hoping to get out of this review, and I think it's one of the most valuable things that I've ever seen in a music documentary. But just before we get to that, Lee, look, please don't call me a sexist, because I'm not saying just girlfriends, because most bands I've ever been in had at least one or two females. So I've been in bands that have band boyfriends and band husbands as well. And it's awkward. It's not. And now that Yoko Ono exists, it's a trope. And just to be real quick and honest, I was in a band where this was an issue. It was a band that was, I was the head lyricist. I wrote all the lyrics, and I was a co-writer with the guitar player, and the guitar player's girlfriend inserted herself every chance she could, and we were in the studio recording what I thought was a really great record and something I'm very proud of. But then the girlfriend commented on the lyrics that I had written, the lyrics that I had spent a lot of time and sweated and lived, and then like the band girlfriend, whose only claim to fame was being a cashier at a Dollar General. That's not a rip on anyone that's a cashier at a Dollar General. I'm just saying that she knows nothing about music. And when that happened, I knew, oh no, this band's not going to last a long time. And it didn't, unfortunately. And that's what I was seeing when I saw Yoko Ono every fucking shot, like right beside John Lennon. Don't you have a job? Don't you have shit to do? Ugh, it's enough about Yoko. Let's move on. The biggest takeaway that I have from this documentary is from the first time that Paul and George have a bit of an argument. Now, if you've watched this, you know that this thing gets contentious regularly between those two. And if you know a little bit about Beatles lore, and I do a little, but not enough to bring myself up with the Beatles fans that are out there, you know that Ringo Starr quit, I think, during the White Album because Paul was really hard on him. There is an argument, disagreement. It's, you know, they're still British, so they're still very nice and kind about it. Like if they're American, there'd probably be more like shit being thrown around. But there is an argument where they're just kind of meandering over this song, and what you see in that moment, and this right here, this is worth the price of admission. If you're a student out there, and I know I have a lot of students that watch my channel, and if you're someone out there who is wondering, how do you make music? How do you make a band? In this first argument, it is a spotlight on different approaches to making music. They're playing a song, I can't remember what it is, and they're just really fucking around. That's another thing. There's a lot of just fucking dicking around in the studio with this. But it's a song that I'm pretty sure that it's a McCartney song, maybe it's a McCartney-Lennon song, but McCartney is definitely driving the boat. And he, in his head, you can tell, he knows where this song needs to go. He has the vision of where it needs to go. there's a moment in this. There's a couple moments where Paul is writing on the fly. He's writing on the fly. He's kind of verbalizing what will be the vocal melody. He's playing the bass. He's telling chord progressions, and then he's fucking singing the drum solo, like the drum parts to Ringo. This more than almost that, it's the best moment of any music documentary, and I've watched just about every music documentary that is worth watching. It's the most important thing that I've ever seen, because you see a straight musical genius in his element, and you see his process. Paul McCartney knows where he's going with his art. He knows where it needs to go. Now he's searching a little bit, but he has a very more of a concrete idea of of where it needs to go. And it gave me goosebumps on every part of my body to see that. Now, the argument that happens is he and George start kind of, mouthing back and forth, because Paul sees them just half-assedly running through these tunes as a waste of time, because he knows where it's supposed to go. He knows what the finished product should be. And George, and says it at one point, something like, I'm trying to just, noodle around and find my way and find my thing. And Paul, because he knows where it's going to go and where it should be, he sees that half-ass running through the songs as a waste of time, because if they would just listen to him, he can guide them to the finish line and to the promised land, right? But George, and you could tell that, George, more than anyone, I thought that we were going to see a lot of Lennon-McCartney facing off, but it was more Paul and George. And again, I was afraid that it was going to be distasteful, but they're British, so even when they really argue, it's not nearly like arguing like overly emotional Americans, right? George is saying, I'm going through my process, and his process is play this thing over and over and over and just keep looping it, and then find something, and then find something to hold on to, and then develop it. And those two approaches are completely valid. And if there would have just been like a producer that they would listen to, and fucking George Martin was there, and Glenn Johns was there, and we know that Brian Epstein, of course, had died at that point. If someone would have just come in and saw this argument, they could have said, hey, what we're seeing is two valid ways to get to the same end. And that moment is worth watching, at least part one, because I haven't seen part two and part three. It just showed that as a drummer, and, on my channel, I always want to think about being drum centric and thinking about how to approach playing music. I try to not just talk about playing drums. I want to talk about playing music and writing songs and arranging songs and doing the thing that people like to fucking listen to, which is fucking songs. And to watch those two ideas of how to do it, and then watch them, butt heads, it sucked, because I was just like, they just need one person that they both respect and trust to come in and say, George, you're right. Paul, you're right. Let's compromise. Let's figure out a way to do it that both parties are comfortable in being creative. It's the most important part of part one. I cannot stress it enough. One of the big takeaways from this goddamn part one is that Paul McCartney is one of the greatest geniuses of our time. He is fucking Einstein. He is Elon Musk of music, and other smart people I can't think of because it's 1:30 on a fucking Sunday night. Watching his process was one of the more humbling things that I've ever witnessed. because we see him in real time write two of the most classic, greatest songs that's ever been penned by a human. Get Back and Let It Be. And the fact that, like, when he was writing other songs, I don't think it was those two, and was writing them and vocalizing them and playing the bass and calling the chords and calling the drum fills. This goes to a lot of students that I've had and people that I know who've been in bands where they don't appreciate when other band members give them direction on their drums. Listen, drummers. If Paul McCartney tells you to play a drum fill, you shut the fuck up and you play that drum fill. And that actually brings up the way that Ringo was reacting during these intense writing sessions. I don't know if they were intense, but they were writing sessions. They were kind of meandering, and sometimes they'd be intense, and sometimes they were meandering. Ringo Starr didn't say a fucking word. He just played drums when music started. It was a very telling way of showing how their chemistry worked. You had, McCartney and Lennon, two strong personalities and geniuses. And then George is a genius, but not a strong personality. And Ringo is just like, I don't want to say he's just glad to be here, because that's not true, because Ringo Starr's amazing. But he read the room the best as any band member. Let's say it like that. Ringo Starr could see that there was tension in the air, and he was not going to be the person that added to it. I think that would be the best way to describe that. Now, we've talked about the two ways of creating music that we got to see. Paul McCartney being able to, visualize and dictate how it needed to go. George Harrison kind of just searching, and that's not bad. That's not bad. That's not a bad thing. Someone should have been there to tell Paul that this is his process, and it's okay too. And that's a valid way to go about it. And then the third one, and it happened almost right after that, and I think it was very good editing from Peter Jackson's point of view, is John Lennon just called for a demo that he had written for Across the Universe. So John Lennon, it's a third valid way to make music. He just went off by himself, wrote Across the Universe, another one of the greatest songs that's ever been recorded, and then made a demo of it. So it was basically felt like this is a finished product, chord-wise, lyric-wise, harmony and melody movement wise, and now you cats just come on and put your stuff on that. Those three ways of making music is kind of how everyone does it. And you know how I know it's a valid way, those three ways, is because the fucking Beatles did it. And those three ways, as a musician, as a band member, you need to be flexible enough to participate in all three ways. Don't be Paul, where where it needs to go, and feels like the listless, endless jamming is a waste of time, because someone else in the band may be getting a lot out of it. And don't be mad when someone comes in with almost a semi-finished product because they spent the time and have lived with that piece of art and says, this is where it should be. This is what it should be. Now do what you can with it, because that's really good too. Because John, George, and Paul, that's how they did it. That's why this documentary that I was really afraid to watch is one of the most valuable documentations of music making that I've ever watched. Now, of course, didn't get into a lot of the other details of this movie. There's just too much. It's 3 hours. But that thing that I talked about with the approach, it's the most important thing that I think that if you're a musician, that you can take from it. One more hot take, because I don't ever get to talk about Ringo Starr. Because if I do a Ringo Starr video, they're going to take the video down and maybe helicopters fly over my house. They're that fucking extreme about it. But this is my hot take with Ringo, and then we're going to be done for today. I fucking love Ringo, and as a Beatles fan, I love all of it. But lately, I've been listening to more, when I do listen to the Beatles, more of the early, what we call bubblegum pop era of the Beatles. And I've been watching a lot of the live stuff from that era, and I'm just going to say it. I like Ringo better in the black and white Beatles. That's right, I said that. Now, of course, what he did later on when they all discovered drugs and got more experimental and progressive, he did great tracks then, obviously. But when Ringo played live during, like, you think Shea Stadium and before, he was one of the greatest drummers in the world at that moment. He had such fucking energy. Now, the drumming that happened later on, White Album, Sgt. Pepper's, those drum parts are a little more thought out, a little more thoughtful, if you will, a little more deliberate. But man, give me punk rock Ringo Starr any fucking day of the week. Like him doing like the Please Please Me era. When you see black and white video of them playing, Ringo Starr's playing like his hair's on fire, and it's fucking amazing. And that's my favorite era of Ringo. Ringo rules. Drum teachers are fucking down him. Get the fuck out of here. You should probably not be allowed to teach drums if you talk shit about Ringo. But my favorite Ringo is when he's kind of like a proto-punk drummer. And he's the best, and he just drives the band like a maniac, and it's fucking cool. So there you go. There's my one hot take, and there's my review of The Beatles Get Back Part 1 on Disney+. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you want me to do the next 3 parts, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Keep practicing until it's easy.